Hello, it's David Swinowski with Rubble Road Soapstone Kits, and today we're going to work on the 2D polar bear. So we're going to use 3 pieces of sandpaper with a bin of water. We're going to trap all that dust in the classroom, minimize our mess here today. So we're going to see how we can change this stone using just 3 simple pieces of sandpaper. Coming in, I'll show you some of my tips and tricks here today. Alright, so we have our shape. We're going to just kind of point the face on the polar bear here, round off the back, maybe make a little bit of a groove in between to separate the front shoulders from the back hips, and just kind of round off some of these square blocky edges. So with the soapstone, if you feel that rock, you're going to notice it's pretty slippery, pretty smooth surface, and that's how soapstone gets its name. It's from the texture of this rock in its natural state. So now we have to decide which side we're going to carve on this rock, and it's a real rock. Softest one out there. You can actually scratch that just with your thumbnail. So we're going to work on this side today. You'll notice I have a bin of water here. I find this very effective at trapping dust and also getting a better finish on my stones. So I use water for all of it. I dip my stone in there. We're going to start off by using the coarse mesh paper. Put that right in the water as well. So we need to do our shaping on the stone, and with stone you have to remember we're only removing rock. We're not adding any stone to it. We're only taking stone away. So if you want something to stand out a little bit more, like maybe the front limbs or the rear of the bear, you have to remove stone to make it stand out more. I'm going to work on this side. You can also fold up your sandpaper here. So the big sheet, just fold that right up. It's going to give you a nice edge. You can use that edge to do your shaping on here. So if you want to make a line for the back hip, like a little circle. It's going to be repetition on here. It's not going to be one scrub that's going to do it. It's going to take multiple scrubs. Like a train on the track, we're going to chew our way into this piece of stone. And for mine, I think I'm going to make the back of my bear flare out a little bit more. I'm going to kind of taper the rest of my bear down towards the front. So you can see where I'm starting that line. I'm going to make that a bit deeper. I'm going to make a definite groove in that rock. How deep do we need to go? I think if we went halfway into it, I think even that would be further than we really need to go. You just want to make sure that any of the grooves that you make for the pattern in your stone are deep enough, so once we go to sandpaper number 2, we don't erase that pattern. We can still see that that is there. I'm just going to really taper the front here as well. And we can make a front limb there as well before we start tapering everything. Do the same thing. Find your sandpaper isn't working as effectively, just open it up, fold it in a new spot, and continue. So now that those two lines, I want to try and get rid of this middle section right here. I want to carve that down so that the front and back legs just kind of stick out a little bit more. But I need a little thicker piece of sandpaper to work with. So I'll just fold my sandpaper multiple times to make that ridge even thicker now. And I'm just going to try and work in that space without carving either side of the legs. So I'm just kind of twisting it just off center, just to cover that area as much as I can. And I'll crisscross it this way. And just start to flatten out those ridges that are left behind. As I'm doing this, I'm going to want to round the belly and also onto the back as well. We're going to concentrate our efforts onto the one side, so it's almost like a relief carving down into the stone. And then with the other side here that we're not working on, we're still going to finish that with the sandpaper, but you can always carve your initials on here, or maybe the date, year. Most artists sign their work. Remembering we don't want to go too far, we don't want to make it too thin. We're also working with a metamorphic rock here as well, so the stone I'm working with here today is a bit more mineralized than most of the pieces, so it's a pretty tough piece of stone I have today. But the trade-off is, the harder a rock is to carve, the better a polish it'll take, so I'm going to be interested to see this when it's starting to get shiny. Just going to try and straighten up some lines here. Then we'll make another groove here. And then we're going to start to narrow that head down, make it more triangular. And then we're going to get rid of the tooling marks on this rock as well. Just going to refold. Just trying to stay on that same track, just to really dig that sandpaper in there. Lines are nice and bold, so now I'm going to start to grind this rock away here on the nose. Thumb technique is great. Pushing on the sandpaper with your thumb onto a concentrated area that you want to work. It's a great way to work effectively on one area. little bits of iron I can see in this one. So some of the things that'll make your stone a little tougher will be the mineralization that's in there. But again, we still scratch this with our thumbnail, so it's still a soft rock, but it's still a rock at the same time. So it's going to take patience, right? Don't get too frustrated if the person beside you is making the same groove in half the time, because you're going to get some different hardnesses in this rock. And no two pieces will be exactly the same. That's kind of fun too. Make sure you have a good grip. I always like to try and stay above my water as well. That way if I accidentally drop my stone, it's going to fall into my water. Be way less harmful than falling onto the ground. If your rock should accidentally slip and fall to the ground and break, just stop what you're doing. Let all those pieces dry. And then use the super glue and glue those pieces back together. It's pretty rare that you can't repair this stone. It glues together really well, just using a basics super glue. Gorilla Glue works really good. As long as you can see that dust, you know you're still carving. But at the same time that we're shaping this stone, we also want to make sure that kind of striping pattern that was already here, that's from the bandsaw. We want to really make sure we get rid of those tooling marks as well. So while we're kind of working away at this stone, just give those a good once over. Just to the point where you can't see that striping pattern anymore. That's what you want to really make sure you're getting rid of. Bring that natural color out. It's the same before. This one's a little bit harder than most. That's all right. Let's take my time. Be persistent. Also going to round off these back edges as well. I'll even get rid of that tooling mark on the flat side where I'm not even going to do the carving. If I'm going to put my name or my initials or the date there, and I want a nice even flat surface as well. It'll just make it easier to scribe anything in there. You could even just use a good finishing nail. Just trace it lightly and then repeat that until it's worked its way into the stone deep enough that you don't have to worry about it being erased by sandpaper or it just fades over time if it's too shallow. And I'm also bringing the front of the head just down a little bit, just to kind of help that front shoulder really stand up. You're definitely using some hand muscles, so if your hands get sore or tired, just take a break. Patience is probably your best tool when you're a stone carver. It takes time. It's a process for stone carving. It's not just one thing that's going to shape it and smooth it out for you. The nice thing about soapstone, because this rock is so soft, we only need 3 steps to do this. The harder a stone is, the more steps you're going to have involved in that process. Kind of thinning this head down a little bit. It's being a little stubborn, but it's going. As long as you can see the dust, you know you're grinding stone away, bit by bit. It's quite a bit of metal, quite a bit of iron in there, which we might see better once we start to go to sandpaper number 2 or 3. You know, stone carving is kind of like having a picture that's out of focus. We'll see some of the little nuances of that stone a little better once we put a smoother finish on it. There's 2 thumbs. Let's have a good grip on my stone. Just pushing that sandpaper around with both my thumbs. Get in there. Working away. I'm keeping it pretty simple. I'm just tapering the front of the head just to make it a little bit more triangular. That's all I'm doing. Making sure we kind of have nice round edges around the back as well, and that front shoulder. I'm just going to kind of smooth out that bump on the top, round it off. I want those front legs to be a little bit narrower than the back hips. So I'm just going to wear a little bit down here. bring that chin up now a little bit. Just folding to get new bits of sandpaper. Almost done. Just gonna kind of carve into that neckline just to kind of help that front shoulder stick out a little bit more again. As I narrowed it down, I got rid of that line that I had there to begin with. So just gotta grind in a little bit more. I'm just double checking all around, making sure that none of those stripes are on there from the bandsaw. So make sure all the tooling marks are gone. And if I have any deeper scratches from me shaping it, I would try and make sure that they're not super deep, but just lighter scratches right now. So that when we go to sandpaper number 2, it'll be a lot easier to get rid of those and start to smooth this rock out. So more just a textural thing right now. Definitely use this sandpaper to its maximum potential today. Okay. So just a tapered triangular head, front shoulder, back hips, a little bit of a groove in between there. And you can see how the head is quite a bit narrower than the front shoulders are a little bit narrower than the back hips. So I just rounded off those back hips, got rid of a little bit of stone for those front shoulders, and then really tapered the head down. So now that sandpaper number 1 is done, I'm going to go over to sandpaper number 2, which is a 320 grit. Put that in the water as well. Now for sandpaper number 2 and 3, I try my best not to scrub my soapstone on the bottom of my bucket. And that's because of the sandpaper number 1. All that grit that we've just run off of this sandpaper, and we beat this sandpaper up pretty good today. All that grit is now at the bottom of the bucket. Silicon carbide is harder than the soapstone that we're actually carving here today. So if we keep on scrubbing that, we're going to be putting scratches in our stone. So we'll do our best to keep that off the bottom of the bucket. If you have ready access to more water, just switch your water out. Give yourself some clean water. But if not, that's okay too. So with sandpaper number 2, we're going to get rid of those little scratches that we just left behind with sandpaper number 1. We're going to start to smooth this rock out. So now we're going to see all the color really starting to come out right now. We want to make sure all the scratches that we don't want to see are gone before we go to sandpaper number 3. And with sandpaper 2, you can fold that up as well, just like you did with sandpaper number 1. It might make it easier for you to hang on to or to use as well. Lots of rinsing. I do a fair bit of rinsing when I'm carving, but I do a lot more when I'm sanding. Every time I rinse it, it shows me where I've sanded and any spots that I've missed. So I find I get a much better finishing job on a rock I use a lot of water. Running all along the top of the back and the nose. You'll also find with the sandpaper getting wet, makes it a little bit more pliable, so it really forms to your stone after it's soaked for a bit as well. We're just looking for consistency right now. Stop, take a look. If you see any stripes, you may want to go back to sandpaper number 1 if you have any stubborn scratches left behind, just to try and minimize them, or you can try and get them out with sandpaper number 2. Fold that up, tuck it into there, because my fingers don't really fit in there very well. If you did a good job with sandpaper number 1 with your shaping and the consistency that you left behind, sandpaper 2 is a bit quicker, and sandpaper 3 is actually the fastest one if you do both of those correctly. It just needs a quick once over with sandpaper number 3. Give it almost like a glass-like feel. I do find the first sandpaper is the most important. It really sets the stage. So I'm just looking for any scratches that I don't want. You might notice some are always kind of the toughest to get are in creases or areas that you made. So you might want to fold your sandpaper up a few times. Pinch that, gives you a nice ridge there. Just kind of fold that and tuck it in there. And just run it along those edges. just to try your best to get into those spots. And I really try and stay above my bucket, especially now. If I'm near the end of a class or you're almost finished, you tend to get a little bit more rushed because you get excited because you're almost done. But then you also want to show your classmates your cool rock. Try and stay by your bucket. That way you'll minimize any drops onto the floor and any damages. But again, if it does break, don't get too worried because it can probably be glued back together. It's pretty rare that you can't repair this. So to stop, dry those pieces off. It's going to be a rock carver. You're going to break some rocks, I guarantee it. That feels pretty good. You can also use your hands or your texture to tell if you're happy with sandpaper number 2 as well, and number 3 for that matter. That's pretty good. I don't see any scratches. Color's really starting to come out. A lot of little fleck in there. It's pretty nice. Probably why this one was so tough. So when I'm done with sandpaper 2, take that off to the side. Sandpaper 3, which is a 600 grit, goes in there as well. We're gonna do the same thing once over. $15, 20 good scrubs. I find sandpaper 3 is really textural for me. You can really see all the colors, all the patterns coming out really nice. Really beautiful. We're just gonna finish this all over. Around the back again. Making sure to do a lot of rinsing, not scrubbing it on the bottom of the bucket, especially now for the 600 grit. When you're done with your third sandpaper and you're happy with your carving, just go rinse it off in clean water. We have to get this dusty water off of this carving. We need to let this sit and dry before we do the final step, which is an oil. Because oil and water don't mix, that's why it needs to be dry. You need to rinse it off to get all this dust off there, because if the dust is left on when it dries and you oil it, it's going to leave little pit marks stuff on your finish. It's just not going to look very nice. My time with this one. It's a bit harder stone, so I really want to make sure. Push, push, push. Not bad, not bad. I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm gonna go rinse this off in clean water. I'm gonna let this dry before I do the final oiling here today. All right, So it's been rinsed, nice and dry right now. I'm just going to use the Q-tip and apply some oil here. So I always like to start by applying the oil to the flat side of my carving first. Just spread it liberally around. There should be enough for more than one application as well if you need it. There's nooks and crannies, right? So once I've oiled the flat side, just flip that over and then just finish. The main carved side. I like to let this sit for at least 2 hours before wiping off the excess with a lint-free cloth if you have it. If not, you can just use paper towel as well. Make sure you turn your carving all the way around. Check it from every angle, because those dry spots can hide on you. That's one of the trade-offs too. With softer stones, they're easier to carve. You might have to give them a couple applications because they can be a little bit porous when it comes to oiling. With these harder stones, and the one we had here today was definitely a harder rock, they take a better polish. They accept that final polish much better than some of the softer ones. So I'm going to let this sit for at least 2 hours before wiping off that excess and checking out my finished carving. And there's the finished small polar bear. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope the tips and tricks were helpful. If you'd like to see more, please like and subscribe. Till the next time, I'm David Swinowski with Rubble Road Soapstone Kits.